Can I tell you the biggest lie I hear from people after divorce? It's not, I'll never find love again. It's not, my life is over. The biggest lie is this: I should be farther along by now. Maybe you've said those exact words. You look around and you see your ex moving on. Your friends assume you're doing fine because it's been a year or two or five or more. You scroll through social media and everyone else seems happy while you're still trying to put the pieces of your life and your heart back together. So you quietly start believing that something must be wrong with you. Maybe you're just not strong enough. Maybe your faith isn't big enough. Maybe everyone else heals faster than you do. Friend, if you have ever felt that way, I want you to hear me before we go any further. You are not behind. You're not failing. You're not broken. And you're certainly not forgotten by God. Today, I want to expose one of the greatest misconceptions about healing after divorce and help you understand why your timeline does not have to look like anyone else's. So stay with me until the end of this episode because I'm going to share one question that completely changed the way I viewed my own healing, and I believe it will change yours too. Welcome back to Find the Joy with Jenn. I'm Jenn Zingmark, your Christian life and divorce coach. And every week we talk about healing after separation and divorce, strengthening our faith in Jesus Christ, and creating lives filled with hope, peace, and joy, even when life does not unfold as we expected. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found me. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. And if today's message encourages you, would you share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone? You never know how one conversation can become an answer to someone else's prayer. So last week, we talked about the 5 stages of divorce grief and how healing isn't in a straight line. Today, I want to take that conversation one step further because understanding grief is only part of the journey. The question most people are really asking is, how do I know if I'm actually healing? We assume healing should be measured by time. We think it's been 6 months, I should feel better. Or it's been 2 years. Why am I still struggling? But what if we've been measuring the wrong thing all along? One of the biggest surprises for me after divorce was that the second year, in many ways, was actually harder than the first. That probably sounds backwards, doesn't it? We expect the hardest part to be right after divorce. During that first year, everything is changing. You're meeting with attorneys, you're signing paperwork, learning new routines, figuring out your finances, adjusting to co-parenting schedules, but you're really in survival mode. And sometimes survival mode carries you farther than you realize because you're focused on simply getting through the day. Then something unexpected happens. The divorce finalizes. The paperwork is done. The legal battles quiet down. Friends stop checking in because they assume you're adjusted. Family members stop asking how you're doing because enough time has passed. Life begins to settle, but your heart finally quiets enough to fully feel what you've lost. The adrenaline that carried you through the crisis starts to wear off, and suddenly the loneliness feels louder than it ever has before. Maybe you have experienced this. You make dinner and realize you're setting one less plate at the table. Your children leave for the weekend with your ex, and the silence in your home feels almost overwhelming. You sit alone in sacrament meeting. You attend a family wedding alone. You realize that life has moved forward, but your heart is still trying to catch up. If that's where you are today, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me. This does not mean you're healing wrong. In fact, It may actually mean you're healing exactly the way many people do. Healing is not about pretending something no longer hurts. It's about learning how to carry your pain differently. Think about someone who loses a loved one. Years later, certain dates still bring tears. Birthdays, holidays, and anniversaries. We don't tell them they're grieving incorrectly because those moments still hurt. We understand that love leaves an imprint. Divorce works much the same way. You've invested your heart, your dreams, your future, your faith in your marriage. And of course, there will be moments that remind you of what you've lost. That is not failure, friends. That's evidence that your marriage mattered. I remember reaching a point where I was just frustrated with myself. I thought I had done all of the right things. I was praying, I was attending church, going to the temple, reading my scriptures, serving in my calling. I was taking care of my children. Yet every now and then, something would happen that brought all of those emotions rushing back. I remember thinking, Lord, why am I still struggling? Why haven't I learned this lesson yet? Have you ever said a prayer like that? Looking back now, I realize I was asking the wrong question. I was asking God to remove my pain when He was actually using my pain to change me, to transform me. There is a huge difference. Now, here's the big idea of my message today. Sometimes we become so focused on getting through our trial that we miss what God is trying to accomplish in us during it. We want Him to change our circumstances while He's patiently changing our hearts. That realization completely shifted my perspective. Instead of asking, when will I finally be over this? I started asking, Lord, who are you helping me, inviting me to become through this journey? That one question changed everything for me, my friends. You see, healing isn't simply about getting back to who you were before divorce. I don't actually think that's God's goal. His goal isn't to return us to our former selves. His goal is to help us become someone wiser, stronger, more compassionate, more resilient, more Christ like than we were before our trial ever began. Now, that does not mean divorce is good or necessarily part of God's plan. I will never tell someone divorce is good, although many times it is the best or only option. I still believe marriage is God's pattern for all men and women whenever it is healthy and possible. I believe most people enter marriage hoping and believing that it can last forever, and they hope that it will. I know I certainly did. But when divorce becomes part of our story, God does not abandon us. He begins writing a new chapter. One of the things divorce stripped away from me was my identity. For years, I had thought of myself as a wife, and then suddenly I wasn't. I was a single mom with three young children trying to figure out life one day at a time. And it was terrifying at first. I didn't know what my future would look like. I didn't know if I would ever be able to trust someone again. I didn't even know if I would ever be able to laugh or love the way that I used to. But slowly, almost without realizing it, God began introducing me to a different version of Jenn, one who depended on Him much more deeply than ever before, one who discovered strengths she never knew she possessed, one who did find joy again, not because her circumstances were perfect, but because her relationship with Jesus Christ had become stronger than her fears. And friend, that's when I began to understand something incredibly important. Healing is not measured by how long it's been since your divorce. Healing is measured by who you are becoming because of it. That's why I no longer believe healing should be measured by a calendar or on a timeline. We love both of those things, calendars and timelines, because they make us feel like we're in control. We think by this time next year, I'll be healed. Or once I start dating again, I'll finally be over my divorce. But healing does not follow a schedule. And it certainly isn't determined by your relationship status. I have coached many people who remarried without ever healing from their first marriage. And I've coached others who have remained single for years, yet found healing, peace, joy, and purpose in their lives. Healing is not about whether you found someone new. It's about whether you've found yourself again, and more importantly, whether you have drawn closer to the Savior. How do you know if you're actually healing? I think we often look for the wrong signs. We assume healing means we'll never cry again, never think about your ex again, or never feel sad when certain memories arise. But I don't believe that's how healing works anymore. Healing isn't the absence of emotion. Healing is transformation. It's noticing that you're recovering more quickly after being triggered. It's realizing you're spending less time replaying old conversations in your mind. It is recognizing that resentment is slowly giving way to compassion, not necessarily for your ex's choices, but for your own heart. It's discovering that you're laughing more than you're crying. It's realizing you've stopped obsessing over what your ex is doing because you're finally excited about what God is doing in your life. One day you'll notice that someone mentioned your ex's name, and instead of your stomach immediately tightening, you simply think, I hope they're doing okay. And then you just move on with your day. It's a beautiful experience. You'll realize you're making decisions based on your future instead of reacting to your past. You'll notice that you start dreaming again, planning again, serving again, living again. Those are moments that reveal healing is happening, even if you didn't notice it day by day. One of the most misunderstood words in the healing journey is acceptance. Many people think acceptance means saying, I'm glad my divorce happened. Absolutely not. I don't know if we'll ever say that. It's not necessary. Acceptance doesn't mean you approve of your former spouse's choices. It doesn't mean you're okay with broken promises or shattered dreams. Acceptance simply means you stop fighting reality and accept the choices that your former spouse made. You stop waking up every morning wishing yesterday were different and begin asking, Lord, what do you want me to do today? That is a completely different mindset. One keeps you trapped in a story that has already been written, and the other invites God to help you write the next chapter. I remember reaching a point where I realized I couldn't keep standing with one foot in the past and one foot in the future. I had to make a choice. Was I going to allow my divorce to become the defining chapter in my life? Or was I going to allow it to become one chapter in a much bigger, better story God was still writing? It wasn't an overnight decision. There were still hard days, my friends. There were still tears. There were still moments that I questioned everything. But little by little, I began choosing to face forward instead of constantly looking behind me. That's what acceptance looked like for me. It wasn't forgetting the past, it was trusting God with my future. As I've reflected on my own journey and the journeys of dozens and dozens of men and women that I have helped and coached and mentored over the years, I've come to believe there's actually another stage of healing that isn't included in the traditional stages of grief. I call it meaning, or maybe even a better word is purpose. This is the moment when your pain begins producing something beautiful. It's when you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And begin asking, Lord, how can you use this for my good? That is a very different question. The first one leaves us stuck, and the second one opens the door to hope. I would not choose divorce. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I can honestly say today that I wouldn't trade the woman that God helped me to become because of it. My relationship with Jesus Christ became deeper than I ever imagined possible. I learned what it meant to trust Him when I couldn't see my future. I learned that His love wasn't dependent on my circumstances and definitely not on my marital status. I discovered strengths I never knew I possessed, and eventually, God opened doors for me to serve others in ways I could have never imagined while I was living through my own heartbreak. Had my life unfolded exactly according to my plan, Find the Joy with Jenn podcast wouldn't exist. Faith filled divorce would not exist. And I would not have had the privilege of walking beside so many incredible men and women that have rebuilt their lives after divorce. Isn't that just like God? He doesn't waste our pain, He redeems it. He makes beauty from our ashes. One of my favorite scriptures is found in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, where we're reminded that to everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under heaven. I love these words so much because they remind me that healing has seasons too. There are seasons of mourning, seasons of rebuilding, seasons of waiting, seasons of growing, and eventually seasons of rejoicing. We don't expect spring to arrive in the middle of winter. We understand that growth takes time. Seeds spend months underground before we ever see signs of life. During that time, it may look like nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, the roots are growing stronger and deeper every single day. Friend, maybe that is exactly where you are right now. Maybe it feels like nothing is changing. Maybe you still have hard days. Maybe you're discouraged because you thought you would be farther along by now. Can I lovingly remind you that just because you can't see growth doesn't mean God isn't growing something beautiful inside of you? The truth is, you're probably much farther along than you realize. Sometimes we become so focused on how far we still have to go that we forget to look back and see how far we've already come. Think about where you were 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. Are you handling conflict differently? Do you trust God more deeply? Have you learned to set healthier boundaries? Have you become more compassionate towards others who are hurting? Do you recover more quickly after hard days? Those are all signs of healing. Progress is not always dramatic. More often, it's quiet, it's steady, it's faithful. This week, I want to leave you with a challenge that I hope that you will carry long after this episode ends. Instead of asking yourself, why am I not healed yet? I want you to ask yourself, who is God helping me become through this season? Spend some time praying about that question. Journal your thoughts. Ask Heavenly Father to help you see yourself the way He sees you. I think you'll begin to recognize that He's been working in your life all along, even during the seasons when you couldn't feel Him. Friend, if you're listening today and you've been carrying the weight of believing you're behind, I want to speak directly to your heart. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not late. You haven't missed your chance to be happy. God is not standing at the finish line disappointed that you're taking longer than someone else. He is walking beside you every step of the journey. He knows your story. He knows your heartbreak. He knows the nights that you have cried yourself to sleep, the prayers that you have whispered through tears, the moments that you have wondered if you'll ever feel whole again. He also knows exactly who you are becoming. One day you're going to look back and realize that the person you are today is stronger, wiser, more kind, more compassionate, more resilient than the person you used to be. Not because life became easier, because it just doesn't happen that way, but because you allowed God to meet you in your pain. You'll see that your compassion grew, your faith deepened, your confidence returned, and your joy came back. Maybe not all at once, maybe so gradually that you hardly noticed, but it did return. And it will continue to come because that's what our Savior does. He heals broken hearts, He restores hope, He turns ashes into beauty and mourning into joy. Thank you so much for being here today, friends. If this episode encouraged you, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel, leave a review, and share this message with someone who's quietly wondering if they're healing fast enough. I also want to invite you to join me inside Faith Filled Divorce, where men and women come together to heal, strengthen their faith, and build joyful lives after divorce. You do not have to walk this road alone, my friend. And if you would like a little more personalized support, I would love to meet you during a free Reclaim Your Joy strategy session. Together, we will talk about where you are, where you want to go, and I will share one practical tool that you can take to help you move forward with greater peace, hope, and confidence in your journey. Remember this, my friend, your divorce is not your identity. It is not your destination. It's one chapter in a story that God is still writing. So stop measuring your journey against someone else's timeline. Stop believing the lie that you are behind because you're not. Trust in God's timing. Trust in His process. Trust that even now, He is making something beautiful out of your life. Until next time, keep your eyes on Jesus Christ. Keep moving forward, one faithful step at a time. And remember this, your best days are not behind you. Your greatest healing is still ahead. Keep choosing faith. Keep choosing hope. And as always, keep finding the joy, my friend. I can help you find it. Bye, y'all.